Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Bill Hirschman. I'm the founder and chief critic for Florida Theater on Stage.com. And I'm here once again with one of the best panels in television. I'd like to start off with our founder, the actress, producer, writer, and many, many others, Iris Acker. And next to her is the playwright, actor, designer, and many other titles we can't even remember, Michael McKeever. And directly next to me, I'm even, because I want to sit next to the really talented people, is one of the best actresses in the region, Karen Stevens. And we're going to start off tonight. We're going to show you a video clip of Les Miserables, and we'll tell you a little bit more about it after it runs.
One more time, one more day, one day more.
So that was not the professional national roadshow company. It was not a Broadway production. That huge cast and that great sound came from a community theater based here, best known as Pee Topa. And we are really honored to have one of the founders of Pee Topa, Alvin, the great Alvin.
Pee Topa tells the audience absolutely nothing.
Exactly.
So Alvin, it's up to you.
Tell us all about what Pee Topa stands for.
Pee Topa is the Pembroke Pines Theatre of the Performing Arts. And we are now starting our 27th consecutive producing season in Southwest Florida.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Wow, bravo.
And so Alvin, and your last name is Entin, which I forgot to mention.
It's okay.
I just figure everybody knows you. Tell us a little bit about how Pee Topa started, where it started. You've been all over the map. You've done all kinds. How did it start and how did it evolve?
It started with a family that came up from Miami Lakes, the Situate Andrews family. They had been with the Main Street Theater. The hurricane had hit, and a lot of people moved up north and to the west. They came to Pembroke Pines, and they decided they wanted to build a community theater there. Put on an initial production of King and I, with Fawn Allen and Terry Stewart, and then 2 years later went into full-time production, and they did Oliver, and that's when they trapped my 2 9-year-old twins to play orphans. And as a result, I had to go to a lot of rehearsals where I had 2 9-year-old twins. And the next thing I knew, I was chairman of the board. And remain such.
And remain such. One of the things that we've talked about, you and I often, is that community theater has a certain pejorative reputation among some theater goers. And you have been, for years, trying to tell people that community theater can be a very satisfying, both artistically and from an entertainment standpoint, undertaking. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, our goal from day one was to present quality theater at a price that our core audience in Pembroke Pines, which was people that had retired to Century Village, to Hollybrook, and those folks living on a fixed budget could afford real theater. We've kept their ticket prices under $20 for 27 years. But in doing that, we have developed a very, very strong cadre of good actors that can play lead and supporting roles. And if we have a weakness, it's always been things like chorus. But we introduced live music from day one. That section that you saw with Les Mis, I had an orchestra, professional, of 14 musicians playing for our Les Mis.
Whoa.
That production, and Michael, you produced stuff, cost me $125,000 to mount, and I paid 1 actor.
I was just going to say that the audience, I don't know if they're aware that the actors do not get paid.
That is correct.
So who does get paid beside that 1 actor?
Generally, my music director. My orchestra gets paid. My stage manager gets paid, and my director gets paid, and my choreographer. Those people get paid. And we try to bring in professionals when we need professionals that are absolutely right for a role. For example, in Les Mis, we brought in James Situich, who is a brilliant actor. When we did Young Frankenstein, we brought in Larry Buzzio, who was perfect for the Victor Frankenstein role. And when we did Fiddler on the Roof, could I have done any better than equity contracts for Avi Hoffman and Laura Turnbull? and when you provide that kind of quality for your audience, they keep coming back. And the other thing I've told Bill over the years is I am the only theater, I believe, in South Florida that does not have one single season ticket holder. I do it all anew with every production.
That said, and I've been to several of your productions, sometimes it's hard to find a seat. They are in the, what's the name of the venue? I
We're
can't
in the
remember.
Susan B. Katz Theater at the River of Grass.
Which is how many seats?
460.
And I have been there many times where you can hardly find a seat.
Well, how many performances do you do?
We do 16 performances.
That's a lot.
And we run them Friday, Saturday twice, Sunday once. Now, we're doing Judgment at Nuremberg, and we're only going to be doing 8 performances of that because we have found that the best straight play that we put on, I'm not going to bring in more than 150 to 200 people. And as a result, I think I can compress that into 2 weekends rather than run that for 4 and have an audience with 30 to 50 people in a 400-seat theater.
Isn't that interesting? The musical sells, and how do we educate the public, the audience, that a play is so worthwhile? And the difference to me, I can enjoy a play more than the music gets in the way sometimes.
By doing them more, we try to do at least one straight play a year. We've done Inherit the Wind, Judgment at Nuremberg.
And these are such good choices.
The Best Man.
The Best Man, which was actually very well attended, and probably one of the best things I think we ever did. We brought in Jeffrey Bruce to play the Secretary of State for the Best Man, because again, it was worth it to us to make sure that there was a real pro on stage doing his thing.
Do you know ahead of time whether you will need professionals for certain roles in different productions?
As chairman of the play selection committee for the last 24 years, I generally have that idea. And then, because I see so much regional theater, and I got to tell you, the professional theater in South Florida is absolutely amazing. And to go out and find somebody to bring in, A, is easy, and B, it's like picking low-hanging fruit. and we don't mind overpaying to get people to come in and perform with us. Yes, ma'am. I pay better than equity rates if I bring in somebody to work with my community theater, because I know a lot of professionals, are a little uncomfortable coming in to have to work with amateurs, and I want them to feel professional, and I want them to feel loved, because they deserve it. They're that good.
Thank you for that. Isn't that wonderful?
And I know people like Avi and Jeffrey have said they've had a joy working with you and working at the theater.
And that's with them.
I'm so sorry. I just want to say, Alvin, I directed a couple of community theater productions way back when I was in New York, and it was extremely frustrating because the actors were not being paid, it's true, but any excuse not to be there is, or they had a doctor's appointment, or their child wasn't well, and they didn't have a baby. So it was very, very frustrating because to have a full cast was like an impossibility for rehearsing.
When we hire directors like Avi and like Jeffrey Bruce, when I have musical directors like I have had recently in Carol Fantel, the people don't want to miss rehearsals. This is a master class for people who want to be in the arts. And I've had much less absenteeism because I'm bringing in top professionals to work with them.
But you've also managed with what you've done to provide a training ground for people who then have gone on to be professional. We were talking the other day about your Sweeney Todd, that your Mrs. Lovett was Cindy Pierce.
That's correct.
And that several people have gotten really their start. Can you talk a little about that?
If you take a look at the cast list of Slow Burn, it's almost a P.P. Topa Alumni Association. Caitlin O'Neill played Dorothy to my Wizard of Oz. Sahid Paban has been in a number of productions with me, remains a dear friend. Troy Stanley played the lead role in The Producers for us. And I could go on and on. Jeannie Lynn Gray, who makes a good living going into condominiums, was our Sarah Brown when we did Ragtime. We're very proud of that. I get a real thrill every time I see somebody that I worked with on stage, going on to the next level. I'm even prouder of two brilliant actors named Edmund and Gary Entin, who left P.P. Topa and have now made 6 major motion pictures in Hollywood, write, direct, and act.
Excellent. But and the flip side of that, though, is that you have also provided these professionals that you're bringing in roles that they might not have been considered for in a larger professional operation, and also that so that they get an opportunity. And also you're doing shows with large casts, which again, in often cases, aren't being done many places down here.
Yeah, for example, Peter Liebrack, who works professionally and is a wonderful actor, did our Oliver because Fagin was his bucket list role.
Yeah.
and then came back and did the Sunshine Boys because he wanted to play, the Willie role that he never got cast for. So yes, that occurs. And as to the second part of it, Bill, it really does mesh nicely. And again, it works as a learning experience.
Do you offer any classes at your venue?
We tried once to run a summer program, but we found that we ran into too much competition from various cities all over the area, which found that they were a moneymaker. So our training and our classes are going through the rehearsal process, and also we try not to turn anyone away. We've had Bernie Lawrence, who is 93 years old and lives at Century Village. We have found him a role in every show he's ever auditioned for.
Okay, that's fantastic.
Go ahead.
Oh, do you have annual auditions, or do you audition per show?
Audition per show.
Oh.
Yeah.
Alvin, I'm fascinated.
But we attend the annual auditions that Theater League does to make notes of people to call when we have appropriate roles.
There you go. I'm fascinated. You have such a great reputation and you have such a great following. Why don't you have a season subscription? I would think that would be a no-brainer.
Well, first of all, we live at the mercy of the charter school, and they don't do their school schedules until late August, early September, when everybody else is out there selling their season tickets. I first get my dates in September. So, one, it's impractical. I can't do what Island City does, which is with the Flex Pass, because I have too many people and too many seats to fill. They've got 150, I've got 450, and then that runs into conflict with my groups. And every group wants to sit in the first 2 rows.
Course.
It's a problem. So we were able to work out at least an economic plan that says we survive on groups, on advertising, on social media. We get very little in the way of donations. We make it on ticket sales,
Wow.
and we're not that expensive.
That's right, how you do it. It's fascinating that you can.
So you don't. So that was one of my questions. What is your annual budget usually?
A little over $500,000.
For how many shows?
4.
Wow. That's amazing.
When we pick our schedule, then what happens is we hear from MTI, Wick is doing this one. We had taken West Side Story about 3 years ago, and we had had the rights for a while, and actors then got the rights, and obviously they get preference. And we'd already gone up with advertising and everything else. And so we appealed to MTI, and MTI said, we would love to help you out. Here's what you can do. You can put on your show, but you can only send notices to your subscription base.
Wow.
Being as I had none, we took a different show.
Now, you've directed
you know-
some of these shows, right?
Oh, sure.
So tell me, the do you still beat your dog question is, you obviously, since you accept almost everybody that has any talent at all, and because it is a community theater, you've got a wide range of talent that you have to work with. First of all, how do you work with people in the ensemble who are not of the same quality as some of the other people? And when
Well, that's
that,
a director you're talking about.
as a
He is
director,
director.
and when the show suffers a little because of that, how do you deal with that inside?
Well, first of all, we try to make it so the show doesn't suffer. I directed Sweeney Todd with James as Sweeney, Robert Allison, Rusty Allison backed up James in that role, and we had Cindy Pierce, and I brought in a friend of mine who sang with the San Francisco Opera by the name of Mark Lewis to play Judge Turpin. Came as a favor and lived at my house. Our problem was we had a chorus that really was not able to dance. So I moved them around
That'll
from
happen.
staircase to staircase. And they did all the singing that the ensemble did, sitting on staircases. I sent Shane Tanner and Amy a copy of our video, and they were amazed. They were amazed.
That it could be
I don't
done.
think we lost anything, because really, the ensembles are very, very important. You just have to make the best use of them you can. I love chorus line. I can never do it. I will never
sure.
find that number of dancers. Cannot do it.
I'd like our audience to know the difference between amateur and professional. And our own dictionary says professionals get paid, and the amateurs don't.
That's correct.
It's as simple as that.
That's correct.
You shouldn't take offense when you, because I think you've mentioned you don't want to be denigrated as as an amateur theater, but you don't
Even
pay.
my friend Bill, who I love like a brother, sometimes when he's writing a review, will use the words, "It was like community theater." And I will send him an email saying, Bill, not every community theater.
Yeah.
And
Yes. Now that you say that, and I realize that. Said, just don't do that.
So now I say amateur theater.
Well, I mean, we all know that, community theater is a great breeding ground for professionals or people who go into the professional theater. Lake Worth Playhouse up in Palm Beach does some of the best community theater that I've ever seen. And they're able to attract really talented people, as I'm sure are you. Can you talk a little bit about how you choose the plays that you do or the musicals that you do? What goes into that process?
several different things. One, it's got to be a show that I think that I can do with an amateur chorus, because I recognize my biggest weakness is an ensemble, which is why you don't do chorus line, and like why I would probably avoid something like Newsies. Secondly, we look to do either A-list type shows that our audience will recognize, or we will try and do what people call B-list shows that I like. And I know that sounds terrible. I've been trying to do Fiorello for the last
That's so
22
darling.
years, and I can't even get that past my board. And I think that's got one of the greatest scores that Bach and Harnick ever wrote.
Yes, I can I
But,
remember
you know,
so many of the songs.
My board worries about what's going to sell. We did a magnificent Brigadoon, and lost $15,000 doing it.
But
Because-
Brigadoon is one of those, you know, those chestnuts that everyone just loves.
I agree with you, but the audience didn't come out. And I lost a lot of money on Brigadoon. The only other show we ever lost money on was Beauty and the Beast, and that was because that was right after Wilma hit, and people were more concerned with putting roofs on their house
Right.
than coming to see us do Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
But you try and do shows that you want people to come with. We just did In the Heights and drew over 6,000 people to our In the Heights.
Wow.
Well,
That's
they
got to
allow-
be good for the coffers, right?
Good for the coffers, and it
Yeah.
was a good production.
How does that relate to your funding sources? I know that, you know, your ticket sales, of course, help keep you afloat, but are your funding sources dependable from year to year to help keep the theater open and functioning?
Our funding sources are our ticket sales and what myself and a couple of other people that have pretty good day jobs throw in if we need it.
Really?
So
Yeah.
it's donations and ticket sales. There's no grants or funding from
I-
county or state?
I think years ago we got a $2,000 Broward grant.
And that's
Wow.
it?
That's it, one.
Wow.
Wow.
Do you have to pay rent on the building?
I negotiated that.
Okay.
And-
He's an attorney, by the way.
Yeah, yes, but I'm a criminal attorney. so
That's
that
true,
doesn't-
right.
We had a wonderful commission in Pembroke Pines, and I was able to work out a deal with my city commission to get a very favorable rental rate. I pay under $5,000 for the use of my theater for 16 performances and all rehearsals.
That's great.
Wow.
It is
So
great.
that probably is equivalent to a lot of grants.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Do you
Yeah.
pay the same royalties that professional theaters do?
Yes, ma'am.
You do?
That's based on the size of the theater, and we pay them religiously.
What is it possible for you to pull from a local dance studio when you need dancers for your chorus?
We tried that when we did Guys and Dolls, and we found a Latin dance group, and they were not very dependable, and it didn't work out for us. Our biggest problem in casting was we tried very hard to get actors of color for our ragtime, and because we wanted it to be authentic, and we would like to have a lot more multicultural participation. And that's why In the Heights was so exciting for us, because it brought out a whole Hispanic
Sure.
cadre of actors and actresses, as
And
well as an
audience?
audience.
Yeah.
Did it bring in a Hispanic audience?
A huge Hispanic
See
audience.
that? That's
Do you think that your audience comes in with a different expectation when they're coming in to see community theater as opposed to when they go to see, and should they have a different expectation?
The answer is some do. Those that have been with us for a long time know what to expect, and we get the comments from them, gee, this is as good as you can see down here. And what we do is we provide cards for all the professional theaters and say, no, it's not. And we point them in the direction of Slow Burn, and we point them into anything else that's relatively close to them. So you want to see really good theater, you go see this over here. And we'll get occasionally folks that are in the theater community that will stumble in because one of their friends
Of course.
I've hired to do the show, and they'll come in there and they're waiting to be really disappointed and say, well, I sat through a community theater production, and they'll come up afterwards and say, my God, I had no idea you were doing this out here.
And you know you're doing a service because of the price. There are a lot of people who are coming to your theater because they simply can't afford to go to the professional theaters that I seem to be charging more and more every year.
Well, there are a lot. What really gets me, though, is some of them that not only charge you a fortune for the tickets, but hit you for $5 for a bottle of water.
Don't get me started.
So before we get anywhere near out of time, you should tell people how to get in touch with the organization, where your auditions information is, where your ticket sale information is?
Everything is at www.pptopa.com. And that'll have our phone numbers, it'll have our location, it'll have our auditions. We've got Jesus Christ Superstar coming up.
Oh, yay.
In the spring, which will be directed by Jeffrey Short, who is a magnificent actor and director. And then this summer we'll be doing, finally, hopefully, West Side Story. But we're going to do the version with the Anita singing in Spanish.
Oh.
So we're looking forward to that as well.
So this gives you really an appetizer for what's to come at PP Topa. We want to thank once again Alvin Entin, chairman of the board, and various other things at PP Topa, actor, director, scenic painter. And we hope you've really enjoyed this. We want you to go to theater throughout the 3 counties. Actually, you can go up and down, another one down from Monroe further up. And if you want to know more about what's playing and what to go see, look at floridatheateronstage.com. So we thank you for coming and listening to us. Come back next week when we'll have another exciting edition of Spotlight on the Arts. Good night.